Welcome to day 11, session 3 of the virtual school on IP. The topic for this session is overcoming objections during registration of trademarks. Our speaker for this session is Ms. Madhu Rewari, who is a partner at Anand & Anand. She has an experience of around a decade in the field of intellectual property laws. Her focus practice area is trademark law, and she specializes in trademark prosecution matters. Ms. Madhu advises on trademark law to companies in various industries, in particular to pharmaceutical, banking, finance, and retail companies. She is known in the legal community for providing commercial and practical advice on the extent to which a brand is available for use, and gives an in-depth and an analytical approach on availability and registrability of a brand. Her core work areas also include drafting of trademark applications, oppositions, rectifications, counter statements, evidence affidavits to be filed before the Trademarks Registry, as well as Intellectual Property Appellate Board. She has a number of national and international publications in her name. It is indeed an honor to have you with us in today's session, and we welcome you, ma'am. All queries related to the session shall be answered during the Q&A round at the end of the session. Participants may type their queries in the chat box. Now, I would like to hand over the session to Ms. Madhu and would request her to make her presentation on the topic today. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that introduction, and I'm happy to be here, for another session in the virtual IP school that has been started by FICCI and CPAM. So in the last session, we had discussed about trademarks, the various concepts and the basics of trademarks. In today's session, what we'll be discussing is the objections which one comes across in respect of the trademarks that are filed at the examination stage. These objections
Excuse me,
are... Yes?
Extremely sorry to interrupt you, but your voice is coming a bit low.
Okay, 1 second. Is it better now? Is it better now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So in today's session, like I said, we will be covering about the objections that are raised by the registrar at the stage of examination, and how to overcome those objections is primarily what we'll be talking about. So if you can just move on to the next slide, what I will be doing is that I will just briefly tell you about the types of trademarks like we discussed, the search and the filing, and then the examination, hearing, and the advertisement. So what I've tried to do here is give you a little bit of background again on the trademarks, and because the objections which you receive at the examination stage can actually also be overcome if you do a trademark search, and that you will realize when you understand the types of trademarks. And then post the filing of the application, there is an examination stage. Again, the similar objections which you may have anticipated at the search stage, you receive from the trademarks office, and then you have to overcome them. If you overcome, the marks actually go to the last stage, which is the advertisement, or else a hearing is appointed by the trademarks office wherein you have to submit oral arguments to overcome those objections. So quickly, let's move on to the first slide, which is the types of trademark. Can we go to the next slide, please? So we had discussed this last time also. I've just got the same slide here. Like we had discussed about the types of trademarks: invented mark, arbitrary mark, suggestive mark, descriptive mark, and generic marks. Invented marks, like I said earlier, are marks which are not English dictionary words, and they are given the highest form of protection. They are considered to be inherently distinctive in nature. The reason behind understanding these types of trademarks is because when objections are raised at the examination stage, the objections are of two types. The first objection is under Section 9 of the Trademarks Act, which deals with the distinctiveness of the mark. And to overcome that objection, you have to qualify the category of trademark in which you have applied. if you are aware of the fact that your mark is invented word, it is very easy for you to overcome the objection on the mark being devoid of any distinctive character, or even an objection where the registrar says that your mark is capable of designating the kind, quality, intended purpose, value, or geographical indication in respect of the goods for which the mark has been filed. So invented mark actually becomes very easy for you to overcome under section 9, which is absolute ground of refusal. Similarly, arbitrary mark also are inherently distinctive in nature, and it becomes very easy for you to overcome the objections in case of arbitrary trademarks. Again, because one can argue that the mark does not qualify the nature or the kind or the quality or the intended purpose or value of in relation to the goods for which or the services for which the mark has been filed. The next category is suggestive trademark. Suggestive trademarks, it is a little difficult to overcome the objection when it comes to section 9, which is absolute grounds. The reason being that they are actually in some way or the other suggesting the kind or the quality of the goods and services covered under the mark. However, if it is a combination of two words, like this is PlayStation, and you're able to say that yes, the mark has already been in use, an affidavit of use can be filed, and it becomes easy to you to overcome. Similarly, in case of descriptive trademarks, if they are purely descriptive marks which are actually describing the nature of goods for which the mark has been filed, one can not overcome the objection until and unless there is clear evidence of use which is produced by the proprietor of the trademark. Then generic trademarks are marks which are common words now, which have become, which are actually now being used as a descriptor of the nature of goods and not really as a trademark. So these are the kind of trademarks one has to keep in mind when replying to the examination reports, because you will have to submit arguments on absolute grounds for refusal of registration by stating whether the mark is distinctive or not. So let's move to the next slide. Again, I've got some examples over here of the kind of marks, word marks, label marks, packaging. Many of these marks have been in use for several years. There are other marks, which qualify as word marks, label marks. There are slogan marks, just do it as a slogan mark. Then there are packaging which are applied. There are non-traditional trademarks also which are applied. The reason again I have these examples is to how the various kind of trademarks are filed, and the objections which are raised by the registrar on section 9 have to be overcome on the basis of the category of trademark it belongs to. For instance, if we have a slogan mark, you have to qualify how the slogan is not devoid of any distinctive character, and the slogan is exclusively associated with the applicant or the proprietor who has filed for the marks, and it actually is exclusively and bona fidely not required in the trade by common public. In case of three-dimensional marks, or in case of sound marks, in case of shape marks, one has to again qualify by showing the use of the mark, and why would public associate a mark just by the shape or just by the sound or just by the color. The reason being that there has been extensive use of the mark on account of which the consumers are aware of your mark being associated with with the nature of goods being manufactured under that mark. Can we go to the next slide? So trademark office is the relevant forum where the trademark applications are filed, and there are 5 branches of the trademarks office. Mumbai is the central office, which is the head office. Then Delhi, Chennai, Calcutta, and Ahmedabad are the other offices. Depending upon, so any foreign applicant, when he files an application in India, automatically the agent on record wherever he is based, he gets the jurisdiction based upon the location of the agent. Whereas in case of any applicant who is based in Delhi or India, the jurisdiction depends upon the manner in which the geographical region of that particular sector would fall. So let's say if I am today in NCR region, I am today in Punjab, or I am today in the northern side, my jurisdiction automatically becomes Delhi, and similarly Mumbai caters to a certain sector and Chennai would cater to like Bangalore, and depending upon the address of the applicant, the branch office will be allocated automatically. So Mumbai, like I said, is the head office, and it also looks at all the international filings that are done. And the website is ipindia.nic.in, and all functions which are online, the searches, filing, prosecution, even the hearings now happen using the online medium. All functions at the trademarks office are decentralized except for the examination process. So when I say this, there's one central place, where the examinations are happening, and the examinations now get uploaded online. So what happens is that, when an examination is done, the trademarks office would look at the mark which has been filed, the goods, the nature of goods and services for which the mark has been filed, and either serve the examination report by email to the agent or directly the applicant in case there is no agent involved, or he would actually send it by post. But because of the COVID situation and because of everything now going digital, most of these examinations are getting uploaded online, and you're supposed to file a reply within 1 month from the date when the examination reports are actually officially received. Thereafter, all documents have to be filed and everything is done online. So that's the process when it comes to examination. Can you go to the next one? So this is a prosecution chart just to give you a little understanding on how what happens when the applications are filed. So the first stage is the adoption of the trademark, like we discussed about the nature of the trademarks is seen. Then the applicant would select the relevant class under which those goods or services for which the mark will be used are actually filed. It's very important to categorize your nature of goods and specification of those goods clearly, because at the examination stage, there can be objections in terms of the inaccurate description of the goods and services. There can be objections that the goods that you have filed for do not fall in that relevant class in which the application has been filed. Or there can be objections that there is a vague description which is given. So it's very important that when the categorization and the selection of goods and services is done, it's done in a manner which is acceptable and which is followed by the trademarks office. Once that is done, one should always conduct a trademark search to see whether the mark is available for adoption or not. And then based upon the analysis, file either a single class application or a multi-class application. And once that application is filed, within 60 days of filing, it's not even 60 days nowadays, you're actually getting examination if all the formalities are completed in a matter of about 30 days, 15 to 30 days, you're actually getting the examinations also. So the examination reports are then issued by the trademarks office. And when these examination reports are issued, the examination has two kind of objections. Primarily, there are two objections. One is Section 9 objection. Section 9 objection is basically dealing with absolute grounds for refusal of registration. And Section 11 is the other objection. Section 11 objection deals with relative grounds for refusal of registration. Once you file a reply to the examination report, the mark is accepted and then it is published for opposition purposes, and then the mark gets registered if there is no opposition. Can you go to the next slide, please? So I think we've covered this. Can you go to the next one? Yeah, for the purpose of filing, like we discussed, the name, mark, and the goods and services are to be given, and the power of attorney has to be filed and be authorizing the agent to file those applications. Yeah, the next one, please. Yeah. So this is basically the stage. These are the different kind of objections which can come in the examination and the hearing stage. The first kind of objection which is raised after you file the application can be that you have not submitted a power of attorney. There are many times that the applicants do not file the power of attorney authorizing the agent to file the application, which should be filed at the time of filing of the application itself. So it's important that the power of attorney is filed so that the formality check pass happens and the mark gets to the next stage, which is the examination stage. The second kind of objection which can come is the transliterations and the translation of the mark. Sometimes a mark is filed in a different language, or sometimes the mark is not clearly given and the translation of the mark is not given if it is in a different language. So it's important that when the application is being filed, the translation or the transliteration of the mark is also provided in the application form. The third requirement which the Trademarks Office usually asks for is filing an affidavit of use. An affidavit of use is basically filed in situations where the application is filed with a user claim. When I say user claim, it means that an application is filed saying that I have been using the mark, let's say from 1st of January 2020. If that is the case, then the applicant has to submit an affidavit of use along with supporting documents at the time of filing of the application itself, stating that I have been using the mark since 1st of January 2020, and these are the documents in support of such use of the mark. Those documents have to be accurate in just with the documents have to be accurate in relation to the user which has been filed or incorporated in the application. If the affidavit of use is not filed, in such a situation, the Trademarks Office may ask you to either amend the application if you don't have actual user, and then you can change the user statement to propose to be used, or you will have to file some document showing use of the mark. And those user documents have to be in relation to the goods for which or the services for which the mark has been applied. The second is after you actually clear the formality check phase and you're able to file all these formality file the power of attorney affidavits if required or the translations if required, the registry would issue an examination report. So the examination report would primarily have two kind of objections. Section 9 objection, which is absolute grounds, and Section 11 objection, which is relative grounds. So Section 9 objection, Section 9 basically says that the trademarks which are devoid of any distinctive character, that is to say, not capable of distinguishing the goods or services of one person from those of another, or which consist exclusively of marks or indications which may serve in trade to designate the kind, quality, quantity, intended purpose, value, geographical origin, or the time of production of the goods or rendering of the service or other characteristics of the goods or services, or which consist exclusively of marks or indications which have become customary in the current language or in the bona fide and established trade practices shall not be registered. So basically it is saying that if your mark is devoid of distinctive character, that is, it is not capable of distinguishing your goods from those of the others. So the mark is not actually capable of being of actually having the function which a trademark is required to do. The basic function of a trademark is to actually be a source identifier. If that first test of being a source identifier is not happening, then the mark cannot be registered. Or if a mark is of such a nature that is actually capable of saying that I am the best, it is basically talking about the quality quality of the trademark or the products, or it is of such a nature which gives you the description that fresh fruits, if you have a mark like that, it is actually again designating the kind of quality of the goods that are being sold, and it is also telling you the intended purpose for which the mark is to be used. then it cannot be considered and registered as a trademark. Or if it is such a word, it is a word like doctor. If you apply for doctor and if you are actually going and applying in respect of the same class like medicines or in respect of hospitals, but this is a word which is commonly required by the bona fide trade and it is common to trade, you cannot have registration over such words. And that is exactly the objection under Section 9 of the Trademarks Act. So a trademark, although will not be refused if before the date of the application it has acquired a distinctive character as a result of use of the mark or is a well-known trademark. So the only two exceptions to the Section 9 are that if you have used the trademark, let's say for 50 years a descriptive word has been used, but as on today you only consider that mark to be associated with that applicant, then the mark has acquired a distinctive character and yes, the mark will be granted registration subject to you filing documents or the applicant filing documents showing use of that mark, or if the mark is a well-known trademark. Then Section 9(2) says that a mark shall not be registered as a trademark if it is of such a nature as to deceive the public or cause confusion. It contains or comprises of any matter which is likely to hurt the religious susceptibilities of any class or section of the citizens of India. It comprises or contains scandalous or obscene matter. It is used and its use is prohibited under the Names and Emblems Prevention of Improper Use Act. Then a mark again is violative of Section 9 and shall not be granted registration. Then Section 9(3) talks about a mark not being capable of being granted registration if it exclusively consists of shape of the goods which is necessary to obtain a technical result, or shape which gives substantial value to the goods. So basically this section stipulates that the trademarks which are of devoid of any distinctive character or which consist exclusively of marks or indications which serve in the trade to designate the kind, quality, intended purpose, value, or the time of production of the goods shall not be registered. Or if it is actually a word which is a customary word which is required in the common trade, it will not be registered. And it also provides a clause which says, another clause which says that if there is a confusion which is going to occur, and it contains or comprises of any matter which is actually likely to be hurting the religious sentiments, or it is obscene, or it is scandalous, it cannot be registered. So you have to basically understand the test of Section 9 at the time you're conducting a trademark search, so as to see what are the kind of changes you should do to a trademark if it is a descriptive mark in order to overcome these objections which are going to be raised at the examination stage. Then the next one is on Section 11. Section 11 basically is about mark being similar to other marks, and hence the mark which is already on the register should not be accepted. A mark which is actually similar to a mark on the register should not be accepted. So Section 11 basically talks about relative grounds for refusal of registration. So it says a trademark shall not be registered if, because of its identity with an earlier trademark and similarity of goods or services covered by the trademark, or its similarity to an earlier trademark and identity or similarity of goods or services covered by the trademark, there exists a likelihood of confusion on the part of the public, which includes the likelihood of association with the earlier trademark. So basically the section says that if there is a trademark which you have applied and that trademark is going to cause confusion because it is either identical to a mark which is already existing on the register, or it is deceptively similar to an earlier trademark which is there on the trademark register, which is going to cause, or which is because of which there is likelihood of confusion being caused amongst the public or the general consumers or the members of the trade, and this also includes the likelihood of association, that the consumers may think that yes, because this is a new brand, it could be an extension of an established brand. Let's say if today there is Ola Drive and tomorrow somebody comes up with Ola Cabs is another word. So if somebody says that yes, this is an extension of an existing mark, there is an association which is going to happen, and yes, there is going to be a confusion in the market that yes, these two proprietors are the same, because of which such marks are not accepted by the trademarks office and are refused by the trademarks office unless one is able to establish or get consent from the proprietors, or are able to establish that because I am prior to the mark internationally or in India. There are many times when when foreign applicants come to India, and when they file applications, they come across some objections from the trademarks office wherein prior citations are there. And in order to overcome those prior citations, there are arguments which are made that the mark is prior in terms of international adoption as against the cited mark in India. Then the applicants, because India being a common law jurisdiction and accepting the international rights of the applicants then submit documentary proof, documentary evidence, international registration to establish how that use has actually spilled over into India, and there is transborder reputation, because of which the consumers in India were well aware of the applicant's mark even at the time when the cited mark was filed in India. So on the basis of prior use and prior adoption, objections can be overcome. Then objections can also be overcome. Sometimes the applicant might say that the cited mark, let's say if there is a mark which has been cited in respect of mist, and there is a prior mark which is already there on the register mist, but that mark is not being used. So the applicant who has applied for the same mark may go and do an investigation of the prior cited mark and find out that there is no use of the mark, and if that mark is actually vulnerable for a cancellation action on the grounds of non-use, then a rectification can separately be filed by that applicant, and the applicant can also submit an affidavit of the investigator saying that yes, there is no use of the mark and the cited mark should be overcome. So these are some of the ways in which the objections on Section 11 can be overcome. Then there are many instances where a mark, you can establish that a mark which has been granted by the trademarks office is actually wrongly remaining on the register, and the word actually is a commonly used word. There are multiple parties who may have applied, let's say, for a word like club, and today, because you have applied for a mark like Soda Club, your mark should also be granted registration, because the word club by itself is a common word, and what you are asking for is rights over the mark as a whole. And under the Trademarks Act, under Section 17 of the Trademarks Act, rights shall be given over the mark as a whole in a composite manner. So those are the arguments which can be taken when cited mark itself are diluted. There are other objections which can be overcome by submitting whether the mark is being used in respect of different goods and services. There are times that, under the Act, the goods are broadly classified under various class of goods and services. And let's say if I have filed an application in class 9 in respect of fire extinguishing equipment, and class 9 also includes mobile data and mobile software applications, I can then try to submit arguments and say that my mark is being used in respect of totally different goods, and the trade channels, the consumers, the markets where the goods will be sold are absolutely different. These are not goods which are, available on a daily basis to an average consumer, and these are specialized and sophisticated goods which will be used by the consumers who are well aware of what they are buying. On that basis, there are various judgments on the basis of which reliance can be placed, and objections can be overcome. Then we also have arguments on marks as a whole being different. There are various cases in India, like there's Griffiths, there's Abercrombie, there are various other judgments, Cadilla. Basically, it actually gives you a very comprehensive manner in which the description and how the marks have to be considered to be similar to each other. Those judgments can be relied upon, and one has to see whether the mark as a whole is similar or not. It is not that the mark should be broken into separate components and only the similar component should be judged together to say yes, the marks are similar, but the marks have to be compared as a whole and then analyzed and judged whether the marks as a whole are similar to each other or not. And if those marks are different and only one of half, or a small portion in the marks is common to trade or is common between the cited marks, arguments can be submitted that the marks as a whole are totally different to each other, and there is no likelihood of confusion on the part of the public or likelihood of association with the earlier trademark. Once we overcome these objections under section 9 and 11, there are other objections which can be raised or requirements such as under conditions or requirements which could again be that some of the goods for which the mark has been filed do not fall in that specific class, or there are times that if a color mark has been applied, the description under the Pantone color should be clearly given. Then there are conditions like association requirements, which can be if your mark is already registered in the same class, which is almost identical or deceptively similar, then the registrar might say that yes, your mark can be associated with a prior mark which is almost similar or identical and is in respect of the same class of goods and services. So these marks are then associated. So once arguments are made based upon these, the arguments are either accepted by the Trademarks Office and then the marks are advertised in the Trademarks Journal, or if the need arises, a show cause hearing is required and physical hearings are appointed or a virtual hearing is appointed at the Trademarks Office. In both the instances, the applicant either directly or through the agent is required to emphasize upon the arguments which have been made in the examination report and overcome the objections in the examination report. Can we move to the next slide? So then the next process becomes the advertisement of the mark in the journal, and if there is no opposition by any third party within a period of 4 months, when the mark gets advertised, the mark actually proceeds towards registration and a registration certificate number is issued. And it is important that you note down the date of grant of that registration, because for non-use actions, one is required to have that date and time, because you may decide that, because the mark has now become vulnerable to a non-use, you may either choose to file an application, a new application, in order to avoid a cancellation on the grounds of non-use, or you may actually decide that you should now commence use of the mark. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, thank you so much. I think we majorly covered everything here because this is a little smaller topic. So we've covered it quickly today. But if there are any questions, I would like to hear it from others.
Thank you so much for such an insightful session, ma'am. Now I proceed to Q&A session. If anyone from the audience has any question, please type the same in the chat box and we will put the same to the speaker. Ma'am, there is a question from a participant. May I proceed?
Yeah, please.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, the question is, the participant has no use other than having a social media page over different platforms. He has no company registration and no revenue as of now. But he is using the mark through his social media pages. Can he still file an affidavit of use and apply for his trademark?
Yes, he can, because under the Trademarks Act, if you look at Section 29, and which deals with actually infringement of trademark, and it also mentions that use of the mark, even in relation to advertisements, would amount to use. So even if you have use of the mark on social media website, and the mark is actually accessible to public because of that, you can file those documents to evidence use of the mark.
All right, ma'am.
Because there is exposure of the mark, amongst the public and in the market, because of which the consumers are becoming aware that can be used. Advertising also amounts to use.
Do we have any more questions? Ma'am, there is another question from a participant. In this question, he says that I'm doing a series of awareness posts through a segment called Village Gyan. A website owner by the name of Village Gyan has asked me to stop using the same since he owns a domain name. I searched the TM base, trademark database, but he has not applied for the registration of the mark. Can he stop me just because he has a domain name and no registration for trademark?
So there are two things here. One, what he will have to establish is, because Indian courts, you also apply the principle of common law rights. So even if you've not applied for a trademark and not obtained a registration, but you have been using a mark, you can challenge a third party mark. Now, when the third party challenge is done, that is passing of case which is filed against the trademark. He will have to establish that because you've also applied for Village Gyan, the mark is likelihood to cause confusion. There is dilution which is happening, and this is going to affect his goodwill and reputation. These are the three prerequisites to be established by the plaintiff in case of a passing of action. So if he's able to establish, he can definitely challenge the use of the mark if if the marks are similar, even though there is no application filed by him.
Absolutely, ma'am. Ma'am, we have received a follow-up question to the previous question.
Okay.
In this question, the participant says that, isn't the mark Village Gyan descriptive when I provide village heritage information through this segment, but he also does the same plus other services?
Village Gyan is not purely descriptive. It can come under the suggestive category if it is actually something, it's a service which is basically towards providing education to villagers. Okay, and it actually depends upon what are the nature of goods and services being provided to consider the mark as purely descriptive in nature. But as a combination, it is something which is very unique, and it is not something which is used by several entities in the trade. So it cannot be something, where you can say that the mark is diluted and it is commonly used. But yes, what you should do is, like, you do a trademark search to see if there are others also, if there are third parties who've applied for Village Gyan. Do a general Google internet search also, and other third party website searches to see how common is this term. All those things have to be first considered to analyze whether Village Gyan, Gyan Village, or how is it descriptively used, how many other parties are there in the trade who use it, either by itself or with added matter. Like, it could be Madhu's Village Gyan, it could be like your name, like Mona's Village Gyan. How is it that others are using?
Exactly, ma'am. Do we have any more questions from the participants? I guess there are no more questions. Thank you so much for addressing the questions, ma'am. It was wonderful having you in today's session.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you everyone for being a part of our sessions of the Virtual School on IP. We now conclude this session. Thank you, ma'am, for being a part of the virtual school.